Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I will be ranking all 14 roller coasters at Hersheypark. I've done a ranking of the Hersheypark coasters before, however now that Wildcats Revenge has opened, I wanted to redo them now again, and also because some of my opinions have changed and some spots have changed, so let's get into it. At number 14 is Coco Cruiser. This is a kiddie coaster, so obviously this ride is going to come in at last. Also, this ride sucks. At number 13 is Trailblazer. This is just a flat-out boring mine train coaster. It really doesn't do anything other than go through some very forceless helixes and then a bunch of straight track. Not to mention the ride is also pretty jerky in some sections. This is just... I know it's meant to be a family coaster, but they could have made it a little bit more thrilling or entertaining because literally it just doesn't do anything. At number 12 is Jolly Rancher Remix. Now, as you remember from a while back, this actually was last in the park for me, but now it's up to number 12. This ride, it's not good at all, just letting you know I don't like it, but it definitely wasn't as bad as it was 2 years ago. This year it was pretty solid at least, but it still wasn't good. The inversions were kind of forceful, but it was still very janky at some points, but it wasn't rough, it was just janky. But I've never been a huge fan of Vekoma Standard Boomerangs, and this is one of the worst ones, I still think. At number 11, we have Laugh Track. This ride is, well, it would be good if it spun. The problem with this ride is the car doesn't really spin. It's not a bad ride at all, actually. It's fun. Definitely it's fun. The theming is interesting. But I just wish it spun more, because if this ride spun like a lot, it would probably be a spot higher maybe. But it doesn't really do much since it doesn't spin. I mean, it's an enjoyable ride, but I wish it definitely did spin more. So Laugh Track, it's not a bad ride. I just wish the car did spin more, because then it would actually be a better ride for sure. Number 10 is Super Duper Looper, and the best way I could describe this ride is this is just a one-element ride. It has that one loop, and then it really doesn't do much after that. The one loop, though, pulls some really good forces, but after that, the ride doesn't do much other than some airtimeless hills, and there is a helix that actually does pull some pretty good forces, actually. So the loop and the helix are the only really notable parts of this ride. But it's a fun ride, I'd say, but it just doesn't do much. Number 9 is Comet. Now, I used to like this ride a lot more, but then it just got worse over the years. Like, the airtime was so good back in 2020 on some of my rides, I remember. But then ever since then, it's just gotten worse and worse, and this year, it didn't give any airtime at all. Like, I didn't come out of my seat once. And that's just really disappointing, because this is still a fun ride. I do like it. I just wish it was consistent and had that same type of airtime it had when it did in 2020, how the airtime was back then. And now, since they're changing the restraints to not buzz bars, but those new PTC restraints, that's going to make the airtime even worse, I think, now. So, I don't see this ride getting any better, actually. I mean, the ride is smooth, I will say that, actually. For how old it is a smooth ride. But the airtime, it has very weak airtime. That's the thing with it. On some occasions, you could get good airtime on that drop, but other than that, it doesn't really have very strong airtime. And at number 8, we have Wild Mouse. Now, people usually hate on this ride and are going to wonder why I have it so high, and let me explain. This ride is just so wacky. When I finally reloaded it last year for like the first time in 10 years, this ride, it was actually pretty good. The airtime on this ride, it somehow actually did have airtime on those hills, was actually pretty good for a Wild Mouse, and the laterals on those turds were actually pretty good too. This is the best Wild Mouse coaster I've actually ridden by far now. Way better than any Wild Mouse I've done so far. And it's not even rough either. Yeah, it's a bit janky, but the ride isn't rough. So this ride is just so strange, and I rode this with my good friend Coaster Dog, who likes this way more than I do. But this was just overall a very fun Wild Mouse. At number 7, we have Lightning Racer. Now, this and Wild Mouse are interchangeable for me, but Lightning Racer, it was running much better in 2023 actually than it has the past couple years. First of all, the pacing felt a lot better than it used to, and the ride actually had airtime this time. Some good moments of airtime too, which was surprising. Ride definitely is not smooth, but that's all right. But I was surprised that the ride actually had some pretty good airtime this time, and the pacing, which usually sucks on it, was much better this time. Um, is Lightning Racer anything special? No, not at all. It's a good ride, though. It's a fun dueling wooden coaster, and is also the best wooden coaster at Hersheypark for sure. It is way better than Comet. At number 6, we have Great Bear. This is an awesome B&M inverted coaster. The inversions are snappy, the ride is forceful. That zero G-roll and corkscrew are absolutely insane. Those are are extremely whippy, those two elements. And this ride is just overall really good B&M invert. In my opinion, yeah, this is one of the lower tier inverts, but it's still an awesome ride with some great forces. The inversions are great. The pacing on this ride is very good because it never feels like it loses its speed until like after the corkscrew. So this ride definitely keeps its speed throughout the ride. Reason why I would consider this a lower tier invert probably is because, well, there are some dead spots on this ride for sure, but overall, this is an awesome B&M invert still, and a really good ride. It's not, as I said, it is a lower tier invert, definitely, but it still is an awesome ride. At number 5 is a coaster that was much higher on my list a couple years ago, but has drastically dropped throughout the past year since it opened. That is Candemonium at number 5. I don't know what's happened to this thing since it opened. In 2020, the airtime was insane on this thing. It had ejector on almost every hill, but nowadays, it's just not as good as it used to be. Some hills are honestly just regular floater now. I mean, the drop and the first Camelback are still really good airtime, and so is the speed hill, but the other hills are just normal floater now, or sometimes not even the airtime just isn't even really that strong at all. But those first two airtime moments, like the drop and the first airtime hill, are always fantastic elements, and the speed hill is also awesome. But as for the other hills, they've kind of been a letdown recently. Pacing on this ride is very good also. Like, it definitely keeps its momentum throughout the ride. But I just don't know what's really happened, like, with how the airtime moments haven't been as good recently. Now, do I think Candemonium is a good ride? Yeah, I think Candemonium is an awesome ride, actually. I would consider it a mid-tier B&M Hyper. It is a very fun ride with still some very good airtime moments at some points. It's not as good as it used to be. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's still an awesome B&M Hyper coaster that you should definitely check out when you go to Hersheypark. Coming in at number 4 is Fahrenheit. This is a very unique and awesome Intamin coaster. Has some great inversions, my favorite being the two final corkscrews, which are very snappy inversions. It also has some awesome airtime moments like the drop, and that speed hill is absolutely insane. I also really like the Cobra roll on this ride, which is an element most people don't really focus on, but I actually really like that element. Pacing on this ride is also really good, as it really doesn't lose its speed until the end of the ride. Towards the end of the ride, like, it's also very snappy at some points, as I told you. Has some great airtime moments also. This ride is just an awesome coaster that I do see some people that definitely overrate it a bit, but then there's also people that underrate it a bit. I think it's a fairly rated coaster. It's an awesome ride, definitely. Really fun coaster with great pacing, some awesome airtime moments, and great inversions. Fahrenheit is an awesome ride. And now we're getting into the top 3, and all these coasters are in my top 25 I've ridden currently. Number 3 is Storm Runner. What a fantastic Intamin launch coaster. This ride is non-stop from beginning to end. It has some great airtime moments, some awesome inversions. This one inversion right here being my favorite, as it's just very snappy going out of it, and it's very whippy, just like this element right here is very whippy. Not to mention, as I said, some of these moments give some pretty good airtime and very good whip on some of these snappy moments. The launch is extremely powerful. This ride, as I said, keeps its momentum from beginning to end. The pacing is awesome. It's just punches a pack. It is an awesome Intamin launch coaster that you must check out when you go to Hersheypark. And now these next two coasters are my top 10 coasters I've ridden. Number 2 is Sky Rush. This ride is absolutely fantastic. Has some of the best airtime moments I've ever experienced on any coaster. The pacing is absolutely unreal. And this is just overall a great coaster. This ride, as I said, has some of the strongest ejector airtime on any coaster. Those first two camelbacks, that drop, the speed hill, all deliver and the twisted hill, all deliver some insane ejector airtime. The drop is one of the best airtime moments I've experienced on any coaster. Yes, the ride is a bit rattly, but the airtime makes up for it and the pacing makes up for it, and especially the intensity. This is by far one of the most intense coasters I've ever ridden. Overall, Sky Rush is fantastic and a must-ride coaster when you go to Hersheypark. And finally, we reached the number 1 spot, and not to mention, this is my number 1 coaster overall out of every coaster I've ridden, and that is Wildcat's Revenge at Hersheypark. This ride is absolutely fantastic and does everything you would want in a coaster. Incredible ejector airtime, incredible pacing. This ride is just absolutely unreal. It's just insane at everything it does. No element on this ride is dull. Every element is absolutely amazing. It has 3 of my favorite airtime moments, actually my 3 top airtime moments, that being the double down, that wave turn before the double down, the camelback, and the final hill at the end. They're just all so insane, the airtime moments on those. Not to mention, you could get like a foot of room on this ride. It's just absolutely wild, and the pacing is unbelievable. Not to mention, you got to get a night ride on this when you go to Hersheypark. Night rides on this are unbelievable. This possibly has the best night ride on any coaster I've ever ridden. Overall, this ride is fantastic. It's my number 1 coaster overall. There is no cons with this thing. It is perfect. It is an absolutely perfect coaster. Joe Draves is a mastermind because he is the creator of this ride. Hersheypark did an amazing job with this coaster, and this ride is just unbelievable. And you must ride it when you go to Hersheypark because this is an amazing ride. So yeah, that is my updated rankings of all the coasters at Hersheypark. Make sure to like this video, also subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching this video, everybody, and this is Kingda Kyle signing off. Peace out.